Bill, I just remembered something. When I share this welcome video, it'll take your co-hosting. It might take your screen sharing ability away. I'll make sure you have that back once we get rolling.
Okay, thank you. It's also nice to finally meet Alexandria and Micah. This is really, it's kind of bizarre. It's like all email and then now it's finally seeing your faces. So yeah, this is nice. Maybe we'll meet up in downtown Akron at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's nice to like actually put names to faces, at least digitally for now.
Oh, here we go. There I am.
Well, hello and to everyone. Welcome to today's presentation of ArtsNow Presents, the first of a mini series called the Arts and Tech Synergy Series. We are so excited to have you all here today for a very unique and different conversation. And we're just excited to have you all join us. Today, we'll be taking a look at a project undertaken here in Akron that blends the two worlds of art and technology. And we'll also have a bit of a broader conversation about some of the newsworthy things we're seeing these days around these topics, from the sale of digital art and what that can mean, good, bad, or neutral, to the arts and artists. So without further ado, I will introduce our speakers. I'll introduce our speakers. First up is Kelli Fetter. She is the Director of Community Engagement and Events with Downtown Akron Partnership. Next is Alexandria Couch, a tremendous local artist. Micah Kraus, educator and artist. And finally, Bill Myers, Director of Emerging Technologies and partner at S3 Technologies in downtown Akron. We are so excited to have the four of you here today. And I just kind of want to kick us off with a little background about the work and ask Kelli more specifically of the background around the banner project, which involved Micah and Alexandria, where that idea came from, and then where the idea to kind of add a digital component to that came from.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Grace, and thank you for having us back on. I had so much fun last time talking with Micah and Alex about the project. So if anyone hasn't watched that session from, what was that, last June, July, a little bit of the background. So obviously, if you are in Akron, have been around Akron in the last few years, you know and have seen and experienced the construction on Main Street. So back in early fall of 2019, we were really thinking about, as Main Street was starting to get put back together, still a year till it was fully put back together, but we started thinking about, what are all of those components and how do the soft pieces look on Main Street? We knew what the infrastructure, the road and the sidewalk and benches and things were going to look like. And we started thinking about the banners and this opportunity to do something different. We had this new beautiful downtown, this new kind of vibe and energy that was coming. And we didn't want to just have traditional like advertising banners. So we had this idea, and I will say banners are not something that DAC normally does or works on. So we're really grateful that the city kind of believed in this vision that we pitched them and allowed us to take on this project. So we had this idea, what if we could work with artists to create really beautiful artistic banners that visually represented downtown as a place for all people. So we put out an RFP in fall of 2019. Alex and Micah both submitted really beautiful designs. They were very different, but we loved them both. So in January of 2020, I think it was, we got them together because we were able to do that then, and asked if they would be willing to work together and collaborate rather than us just hiring one artist. And thankfully, they were game and the project was off and running. And you can see, you'll get to see some images, and I'll let them talk about the work and the process, but really it was a collaborative effort that got us to the final designs. A lot of just open conversation and communication, pushing on each other, challenging each other, that led to this really incredible body of work that you now see on the banners, on the bus shelters on Main Street, and a really amazing art installation with Alex's work specifically right on Main Street in front of Block 3 in the place where the fence used to be. So you can see that it is absolutely stunning. But really a number of things kind of led to the evolution of the project. One being the pandemic. So we had started the project in January of 2020, and by March, everything was shut down and the world had completely changed. And kind of put us all in this unique place where we could kind of step back and think about how this work could kind of change or impact the world around us. So we were able, our funding had to pivot. At one point, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do the project, but we were able to get through all of these challenges. And eventually the project was able to grow. So Metro was really interested in art on bus shelters. We were able to have, iterations of the design on the bus shelters. And then the idea for the art installation came on Main Street. And then at the same time, we were talking with Bill and S3 Technologies about using augmented reality in a number of other projects, and got to talking. And I think I had showed Bill a picture of these banners, and it kind of clicked. We thought, what if we could bring them to life somehow? And then we were off and running on that piece of the project. So it's been just kind of this really fun, natural evolution, and everyone working together to get us to where we are today. So that's a little bit of the background.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. What really stood out was your line about a place for all people. And I think in some ways technology can kind of increase that, engagement and interest, and add to that ability to speak to more people. So for Micah and Alexandria, how did you guys feel about this addition to a digital component to your work? Sometimes you might not immediately take to that, or maybe you thought it was amazing and wanted to take off running with it.
Yeah, I can kind of get into some of that. I always get really excited about things that are digital just because I typically work traditionally. with traditional methods, you know, pen and paper. So I think it's always really nice and really cool when somebody can take something like that and turn it into something that has a different sort of longevity. I also think that's one of the interesting parts about Micah and I's collab. A lot of it was kind of pen to paper and then handing it off, and then Micah digitizing things and kind of working over them. So having another layer to that was kind of exciting to us, especially with the idea of bringing the portraits and the designs to life.
Yeah. Well said. I think I feel the same way. There's a lot of, it was very freeing in this project that in the sense that it began as a collaborative effort. And so as Alex and I trusted that process more and more, I think it opened our imaginations on what else might be possible when more people came to the table. It's a public artwork, the whole installation. And so the ability to engage the public, you know, really engage them to complete the work is exciting as well. So it's not meant to be just observed or to fill a space. You don't have to enter a building to see these things. You encounter them on the way to wherever it is you're heading. And now that people can really bring them to life in a certain way, through interaction is really exciting as well.
And then Bill, as you kind of came into this project, you know, you had like finished works of art and there was a certain level of respect there that you wanted to give to the art and the artist as it existed. And kind of what was your thought process with adding a digital component to this that would make it more interactive while also maintaining the integrity of what was created?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I kind of delicately work through, as you mentioned, Grace. And thank you again for inviting me and Downtown Akron Partnership, and Micah and Alexandria for letting me work with your amazing art. So that's always something that, as an artist myself, I just have to be careful with. I think I have some ideas in my head, but I also want to make sure that everyone involved is also on the same page. So earlier on in the project, it was, you know, receiving the digital files, and when we first started iterating, just making sure that everyone was involved with that process. And if there were any red flags immediately, you know, let's have that conversation before things get rolling. But, you know, when we sat down and, you know, picked a platform, for example, so the platform that we chose to go with was using Instagram. We felt as though between Downtown Akron Partnership and ourselves, that's a platform that is accessible to most people. We also are able to capture the analytics on the back end. So when we go to potentially do more work together in the future, or Downtown Akron Partnership needs to write another grant, we have data, right? Which is always important. So it's what's nice about the Instagram platform is that we can also iterate quickly and be able to send out, oh, this is what it looks like, toss over, you know, a copy of that project over to Downtown Akron Partnership or whoever the stakeholder might be. We can iterate quickly, make changes on the fly, and, you know, eventually produce something that's relatively accessible. So yeah, having that chance to kind of get the feedback quickly and iterate quickly in a digital environment, it's a huge thanks to everyone involved for making that process just as seamless as it could be.
And with that, would you mind showing us a quick little demo so everyone can kind of get an even better understanding of what the project is if they haven't seen it in person?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to pull up here. So this is a breakdown of all 12 experiences. So Dominic from Downtown Akron Partnership and I, we went down and filmed on a beautiful day in Akron, each one of these experiences kind of through our lens. So as you'll see here, we have each one in particular I wanted to show was this one here. So I actually, after you kind of move the image that pops up on Instagram into place, it sort of comes alive in front of you. And there's a number of things happening here. But what I like about this one is it shows kind of the dimensionality of the whole experience. So you can move your phone after it's locked on to the target image, you can move it to the side and see those 3D elements kind of come out at you. And so there's a couple things going on here. One, we wanted the face was so well done artistically that we wanted to continue to draw you in and make you more intrigued. And working with Kelli, she was very strong on like the eyes and being able to bring the eyes in, because I felt like that was, we agreed that that was such a crucial component to this. So thanks to Kelly, we put a lot of effort towards making those eyes sort of blink and a little bit more active, and hopefully add a little bit extra layer of intrigue to the whole piece. And the ability to just turn the head ever so slightly. So one of my designers that I worked with, we wanted that sort of extra piece as well, just to bring a little bit of subtlety to the animation. Again, how do you just continue to draw you in and make you really see every component of this piece of art? And we felt as though the eyes and sort of that slight little movement with those 3D elements were kind of hitting on a lot of things there. So yeah, each one has their own sort of unique turn of the head to it and its own kind of speed in which it blinks. We also extracted different parts of the art that we thought were interesting and kind of made that as that particle effect. That's a 3D that comes out from behind you. And initially we were like, maybe we shouldn't add the particle effects in because it could be a distraction to the art. But we eventually arrived at that it really adds something different, that extra layer of depth to the experience that I think you can only really enjoy from an augmented reality experience. So, and luckily the Instagram platform itself allowed us to sort of have those 3D particles be part of this. So yeah, this is, it's just really fun. I think the user experience is pretty solid from lining it up and getting the tracking image just right. We don't think it's overly complicated, and I think that's such a crucial piece of this too, is, you know, this could be someone's first AR experience. So how do you make that barrier to entry as low as possible? And I think we hit the nail on the head pretty well.
And then you can turn it, the front-facing camera towards you, correct?
So we're going to talk about the Easter egg component. So yeah, that's kind of a secret element to this, and actually the data that we're seeing on the back end as this is coming in, people are having fun discovering this. So yes, in its full functionality, you can scan the front, it does this effect, but what you don't see, and what I challenge everyone on this call to go do, is when you're experiencing this, you actually become the face. And all the way down to the ability to have your eyes open and close along with the artwork, and then your mouth becomes the art's mouth as well. And so you, again, I think Kelly, Micah, Alexandria could probably talk more about this, but I just remember Kelly in particular mentioning how we want you to become the art to a certain degree, and we thought what better way to do that than you actually wearing the art on your face and becoming the character. And I think that was it was a layer of complexity we didn't initially think we were going to tackle, but we figured it out, and I think it really adds a whole other way of using this digital art. So we're very excited about that.
Chris, I just wanted to add a quick note if I can. Bill, thank you for showing those. Every time I see the experience, it just makes me smile. And every time I see Alex's artwork out there, it is just amazing. But I think what's really cool, so when we were coming up with the design for this whole project, one of the things we talked with Alex specifically about was, how do we create this series of faces that represent all of Akron? So Alex did a beautiful job with these 12 faces. And the idea being that anyone could come down to Main Street and look at a banner or look at this art installation or the bus shelter and see a piece of themselves or a piece of someone they know in any number of these faces. So they're also fluid in age and gender and race. Smile. And I think now the fact that the faces can come to life, they've become like real people almost, at least in my mind. And it just feels like you have this kind of like welcoming crew on Main Street now, that there are these people and they are our friends and they look like our friends and they look like us. And it just really shows, like we are just such a beautiful community, especially when we're all together like that. So I just wanted to add that. I just think the AR component really kind of like brings to life that feeling that we were going for when we initially talked about the designs.
And speaks to kind of what you want technology to do, in so many ways. There's a lot of, there's plenty that people can say that is not great about technology, but yes, to make us feel like a community and like we can see ourselves in something that we might not expect is incredibly valuable. And Micah and Alex, how is it to see your work come to life? Like, I imagine in your mind it comes to life, but to see it come to life must be different.
It's been, it was such a long project in development, again, in a virtual interaction, other than our first chance to get together in January of 2019. That, is that right? January of 2019, or was it 2020?
2020,
It's 2020.
yeah.
But yeah, we worked so well with each other and so cooperatively in a virtual way, but communicating clearly, and there was so much trust coming from Kelli and Susie at DAP, then with Alex and I working with each other, and a lot of it was done in solitude with each person, with little nuggets being shared here and there. But I think because of the trusting relationship, everybody knew that they were on board for a reason, and that we had a really exciting but very big responsibility on the job, to bring art to Akron that represented the communities of Akron, that there was a seriousness of purpose. And so seeing that all slowly evolve, and then when those first banners went up, and then some of the bus shelters started going up, and Alex's art installation here, it was just like these pieces falling into place, and Main Street was finishing up. And so this piece now, it just re-energizes it. Hasn't been up long enough to have lost its energy, but it's like another jolt of energy to be motivated to come down and check it out again, and learn new things. So yeah, it's really exciting to see. It's exciting to see somebody take your work and find new potential with it. And that's certainly what's happening here with Bill's work on this.
So on your end then, Kelli, now that you've kind of added this, and as you mentioned before, you were interested in working with Bill with augmented reality and other things in downtown. How is DAP seeing the benefit of this technological engagement in other ways?
Yeah, so I think what's really fun, so this project and the AR component, the other augmented reality projects we've done, have all happened simultaneously with so many, the new murals on the sides of the Civic. There's so much happening right now. And I think for us, what's really great is they all play a role in getting people to come back to downtown. So right now there's such a focus and energy around, coming out of construction, coming out of the pandemic, really making really strong invitations for the community to come back to downtown. So many people haven't been in downtown in, sometimes a year, maybe longer, for all of these reasons. And we want them to come back and see it is such a beautiful and amazing place. And there are great businesses and arts and culture institutions that need support and love. And there's amazing things to do just by walking down the street. So having all of these pieces, it's really fun. There was one day I was out right on Main Street, and I looked around, and the number of people out just taking pictures, taking selfies, having photo shoots, taking pictures of the art. It's amazing to see. And so once in a public space forum we were in, they talked about the sign of a really great public space is people want to have their wedding photos taken there. And that has always stuck with me. Like, people want to take pictures in beautiful places. And for me, even just that simple thing of seeing how many people are out taking pictures every night, every Saturday, every Sunday, and just seeing them interact. And then they're walking around, and then they're finding places like Blockview and Chill and Coffee Roasters and all of these great businesses we have, just because they're out walking around now, looking at the rubber worker statue. They're moving around on foot and seeing things they wouldn't see if they were driving through or weren't here at all. So I think all of these things kind of layer to make a really big impact, and really are helping bring people back to downtown.
And in that like kind of complementary way, so much of what we try for with ArtsNow is to help people understand that art is for everyone in any space that they can find it, in any way that they can find it. And it just like works together so nicely, and these pieces 100% speak to that, the importance of that work. So it's
And the other
incredible.
thing that I'll just add one more thought is just that these are all things that you cannot experience anywhere else. Like if you want to come experience this artwork, you have to come to downtown Akron. You aren't going to find it in any other city in this way. So all of these things make the experience in downtown Akron so unique to downtown and really create something special, which gets into, I know today's topic is on the placemaking pillar of the cultural plan. So it really gets into like all of these things, and art specifically is so important when it comes to placemaking and community building.
So we see here with this project, you know, a very unique example of people coming out of their homes, taking art that already exists by wonderful local artists and adding a digital component to it. So to kind of shift gears a little bit on you guys and kind of broaden the discussion to the larger discussion of arts and technology. We know that there's a lot of things in the news lately. One thing that many of you on this call may have heard of are NFTs. Everyone hold on to their hats. I'm going to attempt to explain NFTs. So NFT stands for non-fungible token, which basically still means nothing. But my understanding of it, as based off of my research, is that you're getting an original piece of digital art, and you have all the rights and ownership to it. And with that digital art and that ownership, people are kind of finding value in this and creating value out of it, large value, large monetary value. We're seeing pieces go for multi-millions of dollars. And so the conversation around art in this world is definitely changing, and original art is being created by new artists that are coming out every day. And I kind of can't help but want to ask Micah and Alexandria, like, how you feel about that. How does it feel like it is in any way transforming how you create art, or how you look at art, or how you see other people viewing it?
I think it's definitely all of the above, and I'll kind of try to briefly hit on all of these things in a way. I think art's constantly in a state of flux. There's always something preceding, and there's always something that comes after. And so I think when you have something like digital art, specifically, you know, the kind of NFT market or this new kind of cryptocurrency market that we're seeing, it just kind of seems like another phase in the inevitable. And while I think it's like, you can be a little concerned about, you know, maybe competing with the digital world as a more material artist, you know, I think it is a little difficult to compete with, you know, a tablet per se. You know, material artists are going out and gathering all types of material, but digital artists are putting in just as much as effort, you know, to maneuver these softwares to create the types of art that they're making. So while I think it's a little, it can be a little, you can be a bit wary of it. I also just think it's something that's new, and it's pioneering, and it's also exciting in that way. It makes me want to get into digital art. My dad came home from work and was like, have you heard about NFTs? And if he's hearing about it, then it you know, it must be, you know, it must be some big thing. And I think that the idea that so many more people are kind of becoming in tune with it. You know, if he's hearing this at work, you know, downtown city of Akron, and he heard it from a friend, that means more people are getting interested in art. And I just don't see a way in which that could be a bad thing. If the digital world is paving the way for accessibility, for people to become more interested in the things that we're a part of, I think that that's a very good thing as well.
Yeah, I would add to that I'm always a little, I don't know, let me begin by saying I am excited that there is art on display through murals and these long-term temporary installations in downtown Akron, where artists were compensated appropriately to create those things. That is a that is Akron's NFT step forward. Like that's perfect evolution. So when that happens and creates wonderful work and interactions with the public, I think it causes other artists from outside of our community and within the community to want to be engaged. And that's a really important step forward for us. So everything else feels a little out of, like, so far ahead of diving into digital compensations and so on. It's exciting and it's a possibility, and it's something that I'm sure artists in this area will tap into, because for a lot of artists, it's kind of like any means necessary. If it's a medium that will help them get their message across, they're going to access it. But to be kind of like maybe retrograde on that, part of what Alex and I were doing in our work was to take things, like, we knew we had to work in a digital medium so that the work could be printed and formatted in various ways. But we both worked as with handmade materials as much as possible in a digital media, so that it felt tangible and textured, and it felt like Akron, something that has been handled. It is not perfect. It's been manipulated and used and worn over time. Like, that was an important part of the aesthetic of what we were creating, despite the fact that a lot of it had to go through a digital filter. So that's what I like about the explosions of noise and textures that come out of the AR, is that is a digital rendering of something that feels tangible and textural, activated through a digital device. That's most interesting to me, because I don't know, it transcends the medium to create an experience, a sensual experience for the viewer. So I have a hard time really processing the money gains and things like that can come through, if it's a trend or just a new movement or a new way. I'm going to let it find its way. And if I at some point encounter it in a means that will benefit me or my family and my artwork, then great, let's figure it out. But until then, it's a little over my head, and I'm not sure I can quite wrap my head around it yet.
Yeah, I'll add, I think it's an actually really interesting thing. As a more material artist, I'm really interested to see where it's going, but not necessarily that I'll be participating in it, because it does very much like go over my head. I've heard of an NFT. I have absolutely no idea. It doesn't matter how much you read. I have absolutely no idea what that is. And I think that that's an okay thing, because once again, like, the art world is cyclical in nature. And as soon as we go all digital, there's this worry that we'll go all digital, we'll lose the traditional. But the world is cyclical in a way that it will always cycle back around. When you get too much digital, reading, you want a physical book. When you get too much digital art, you want to see some art in person, or you want to touch something, you want to experience something. And so I think that kind of recognizing that there's a place for all of this to exist is very important to kind of qualm that worry. And I think that's pretty big in discussion right now. Is an NFT or the digital art world sustainable, environmentally, this, that, and the other. But I think things always come back around the way they're meant to, and benefit us in the ways that they're meant to as well. There's always a lesson to be learned.
So I'm going to piggyback off of that. That was, the way you ended that was perfect, because I think it's important to recognize that, yes, there could be money to be made with NFTs, but what you also have to be careful about is, like, getting into blockchain and minting something onto the blockchain and paying, like Alexandria said, like these environmental, like gas fees. These are like fluctuating fees that you might have to shell out as an artist $500, $600, $800, depending on the day, just to get your digital item, whatever shape and size it is, onto the blockchain. And that money is going somewhere. It's an investor. It is to an actual cause. No one, sometimes we don't even know where that money's going, but is like a tax essentially to these artists. So if you are an artist that's interested in getting into NFTs, just be really careful with the whole like gas fee thing, because it can be very expensive to mint things onto the blockchain. But I will say, on a positive note, I think NFTs are exploring something much bigger. And I'm going to go back to my nerdy side with augmented reality for a second. So bear with me. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. So if I get giddy, I apologize in advance. So AR headsets are coming. These glasses that I'm wearing right now are just regular Costco glasses, but in 1 to 2 years, these glasses will have the ability to look around at just about anything around me. Let's just say I go to downtown Akron and I've uploaded these experiences that DAP put together. And I don't need to hold up my phone in order to have this experience. I just use my glasses, it recognizes the picture, and it just happens in front of me. It's all seamless. It's leveraging the 5G network. It's all just this seamless experience. So let's go to NFTs for a second. What if you look over to your friend and they've purchased an NFT for a really cool hat that Alexandria created, and because it's minted on the blockchain, or maybe it's in this online store that she's created, you can buy that that hat she created. Let's just say it's $50. And when you look at her, she's wearing it, maybe someone else bought it, they're wearing it. It's almost like a video game, to where these glasses are processing people's art, people's clothes, people's whatever avatars. This tech will be able to blend those worlds together. And so what we're learning with NFTs right now, what we're learning with AR, with this experience, this is just the tip of the iceberg with what's to come, and the incredible amount of opportunities for artists that will be coming from a digital world. So like, hold on tight, hang on. Things are about to get real crazy. Chat today just announced these new glasses like an hour and a half ago, that you buy them. They haven't announced a price yet, but you get them, and leveraging literally the same platform that I was using to build this experience, you're going to be able to go out into the real world and just see things virtually. So, you're going to Giant Eagle to buy macaroni and cheese. It's going to draw a path out to go find that macaroni and cheese. And it'll also probably suggest 3 other things while you're walking there. So I'm going to stop talking, but point is, there's some really cool stuff coming, and we are there on the forefront, and we've got some amazingly talented people here in this space that has started that push in the city of Akron, which I think is pretty freaking cool.
So it sounds like in many ways, this isn't pushing what we typically describe or imagine as an artist out, but offering them new opportunities to have the public engage with their work, purchase their work, and interact with it. So it's not all, not all negative, not all confusing, but we could all take $1 million. That would be great.
It's funny because my teacher brain is like, oh, bleep. Like, oh no, how am I going to teach? Oh, my artist side is like, this is incredible. The potential is unlimited. But yeah, but that's what, I mean, I started teaching long enough ago that I remember when the first, iPod was announced, and then all the things that we grappled with through that time. And wow, what if they could make a phone that had this functionality like the iPod? And then that happened. And so yeah, you kind of navigate through and find the positives and try to, manage the potential negative things. But I also like, though, I've been thinking this whole time about kind of the history of photography, and how, the camera essentially existed for couple thousand years before the photograph existed. And artists and various people would use the camera obscura in ways as a means to an end, without really the technology being completed yet that we know it now. People were using camera obscuras to be able to draw onto a canvas faster, so that a person didn't have to sit for a portrait for days on end. To understand the world, to measure architecture, to do all kinds of incredible things. Finally, through some dumb luck and incredible experiments and so on, people figured out how to freeze that image and keep it forever. That was only, what, 150 years ago? And look where we are now with photography. And so when I think about what we're talking about here with technology, what excites me is how artists will subvert that technology to make statements, and what can happen with social protest and things with this kind of, you know, eyewear that can activate messaging and so on. Because, you know, I think one of the most exciting parts of being an artist and being part of an artist community is seeing how you can take something that was made for a purpose and subvert that purpose, and use the piece of technology or the equipment or material in a completely unthought of way. So that's definitely going to happen with what we're talking about here. Artists are going to see the potential of this medium, of this platform, for things that the designers had never considered, and what kind of change and expression that's going to bring is really exciting. Like, what about a graffiti artist that begins to use this? How does illegal or unwelcome artistic expression become a part of our community and our society when we can tap into this technology? And that's pretty incredible. So a lot of things to look forward to.
And that's exactly it. Like, my next question was kind of thinking along the lines of, Bill, is there a good, safe way to kind of start to experience this? If you're an artist who's interested in creating digital art or kind of entering this world, is there a good place to start in your mind's eye, with what you mentioned earlier about being careful about maybe being taken advantage of in certain situations?
Yeah, I think for me, I actually do a lot of learning on a platform called Clubhouse. It's kind of a buzz term for a platform for both iOS and Android that is communities, kind of like micro communities. And what I've learned, everything I've learned about NFTs, for example, has been from Clubhouse. It's just listening to people talk about it, just kind of being a fly on the wall and just listening to experts, thought leaders, casual art, like everyone just talk and just observing. I think Clubhouse is an exceptional platform, and you know, Facebook's coming out with their own version of Clubhouse, Twitter has theirs, but I think being able to jump in and out of just conversations and just hearing everyone's stories, you can kind of form your own perspectives pretty quickly. I would say in terms of creating these experiences, you know, I think social media platforms are incredible tools to build these experiences onto. And, you know, as a creator myself, like, I'm lucky enough to have a platform like Instagram and Facebook. They run on a piece of software called Spark AR. Spark AR is free to download, and there are tons of outlets and abilities to just jump in and play. Same thing with Snapchat. I mentioned that they are coming out with these spectacles, augmented reality glasses, the 4th generation for them. And if you want to just start building and hacking and creating something on your own and taking your existing art, that's the cool thing about this, is you don't necessarily need to come up with brand new concepts. Take what you've already done, that's what this project was, and bring it into the AR world. So that software is called Lens Studio. After the call, everyone can download it. It's about a gigabyte of storage, but I guarantee you, to get up to speed and just play, that's going to be the most fun you'll have all day today. And then the process to push that to the world, and then literally anyone on the entire planet can start playing. That's the benefit of the Snapchat platform. Facebook takes about a week potentially to run it, and it's a bigger process. But if you just want to create something and launch it into the universe, man, Snapchat is such a cool platform for that.
Well, on that note, does anyone who's with us today have any questions for our speakers? Don't be shy. feel like I know Nicole's on the call now. Nicole Mullet. I feel like she probably has a question.
She is here, but fire alarm is also going
Oh,
off in the hallway. So the timing today has been going really, really beautifully for me, guys.
no problem. Anyone else? Let's see, or anyone on Facebook. I can also see comments there. Is there a project, Bill, that you would like to work on in Akron specifically? Anything you're dreaming up or anything you'd like to
Don't get me started. Well, I already know Downtown Akron Partnership gets me, which is amazing because it normally takes a while to understand what's going on in my head. So yeah, thanks for making an effort to like understand the craziness that is my brain. NCC Akron is also doing some really epic stuff. I'm currently working on an audience engagement project and trying to figure out new ways to engage a dance audience. So think your typical dance performance. How do we leverage this technology to bring in new audiences or engage the existing audiences in new ways? So very thankful to be part of that. In terms of like a dream project, I would say the ability to tell stories leveraging AR in unexpected ways throughout the city. So let's say, for example, I really want to start connecting the dots on the Underground Railroad, let's just say. I know there are tons of locations all throughout Northeast Ohio, but specifically like Cuyahoga Falls and here in Akron, that maybe it's a virtual tour that you don't have to go to it all in one day. Maybe it's you take it step by step, you see these locations, but you know, it's all about blending in a useful way these augmented reality stories on top of the physical world. And I think a project like that would just be absolutely exceptional to work on. And just like, how do you tell the narrative of the city just over time? I've had the chance to work with like the Simon Perkins Mansion, the Summit County Historical Society. There's just so much to talk about. Where do you start? But I think like this project shows we have talented artists, we have creators, we have passionate nonprofits that get it and are willing to more than dip their toes into it. They're ready to go full hog into it. That's huge. And to have that support is just, it's really big. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Alex, I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier, that there's a place for all of this to exist. And I think that is just a tremendous positive outlook on things, and just, you know, using caution, particularly to our artists when things are a little new. But yes, kind of being willing to experience and experiment and show your art in new ways, because we have a lot of great artists here and in Akron and Summit County. And I think the more ways for the world to know what exists here, all the better. So that's really exciting. So I will put out one more call. Do any of our participants here today with us have any questions? You can put it in the chat. You don't even have to unmute yourself.
I think I saw, sorry. I think I saw a question from Nicole, who's on with us, not Nicole Mullet, other Nicole, asking about the collaboration and that process. I'll just give a little bit on what that was like on the DAP side, but I'll let Alex and Micah talk about, and Bill talk about how it worked for them. But I think for us, from when we created the RFP, which we worked and created that in alignment with ArtsNow, and thank you to Nicole and Grace for your help in kind of guiding that. We knew that the cultural plan was happening. It wasn't quite finished yet, but we were really intentional about wanting to take all of the pieces we knew of the cultural plan and try to incorporate as many of those principles and that kind of framework into this process as we could, to kind of set an example as best as we could. You know, nothing's ever perfect, but try to set an example so that when the cultural plan came out, there was a really good, like, this is how this could work. I will not, again, nothing is ever perfect, but I think for us, one, being really intentional about the artists we were looking for. So that RFP, we paid artists to submit their work, which I think is really important. and just along the line, Micah mentioned it earlier, but for us, making sure that artists are paid compensated fairly is so important, and I think goes a long way in starting that relationship and building that foundation, that they know we trust them and we see the value in their work, and just continued that throughout the process. So, I mean, we hired them for a reason. We loved their work. We trusted them as artists and as individuals, and kind of gave that trust to them and let them, there was a general framework and a general thought behind the work we wanted, but really they're the creators, and we wanted to see how they took that prompt and kind of imagined it. So we really kind of left that to them and just tried to communicate as much as we could. And I think it turned into just a really beautiful collaboration. And then, every time we brought in new partners like Metro or Summit Education Initiative on the bus shelters, and even working with S3 Technologies in the end of the project, we kind of just tried to keep that mindset the whole way. We were working with partners who were experts and were great at what they did, and we left, gave them our trust and let them do their work. But I'll stop and let them all talk about it as well.
I was gonna say, for us, it was relatively easy. And I think, kind of going back to what Kelly was saying, when you establish a baseline of trust and, accountability, and, everybody's getting paid for the work that they're doing, it's really hard to go wrong in that case. You've already been paid when you show up to the first meeting, you're smiling already. But also when you get to work with people you've worked with previously, I think I've just showed up to volunteer, with DAP, painting murals and things when they were working with my mom on her own art projects and things like that. When you get to work with people you trust and that you are building healthy relationships with, everything else kind of follows suit. So when Mike and I started creating things for a project, just being able to see each other's work and kind of bond as printmakers and artists kind of established a baseline for how everything else would go. A lot of what I was doing was just making the portraits, and then we were finding different ways to hand them off, so that Micah could digitally, manipulate and add all these cool deconstructions and reconstructions to them. But once again, it was so easy because we already had kind of established that baseline of trust. Bill had talked about, way previously in this conversation, the idea of maintaining a sort of structural integrity to a piece that you're working on digitally. When you have to manipulate somebody else's work, there's always this question of whether you trust someone to do that. But I think I had full trust in Micah. And once I saw how cool the AR stuff was going to be, I was just like, oh, this is great, And I think that's a really good and sometimes a rare feeling when working with other artists. I will say that not all projects mesh this easily, but we got really lucky.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think we were all enthusiastic to work on this, but Alex is so right that it doesn't always work. Not everyone shows up with the same cooperative mindset. And I'll go back though and say that we started with a really clear framework from the simple logistical side of, here's the number of things that need to be created. Here's the format they will be in, the size that each of them need to be. We need to save space for sponsorship. All of those things were laid out very clearly. DAP had done such a good job of outlining that it sent Alex and I off then to really consider, okay, how do we solve that problem? And I think on any project, when there's a mistake in thinking, well, let's offer complete open freedom so the artist is not inhibited by boundaries. That doesn't really work so well, because you might come up with some great ideas, but it's all horizontal, and these things needed to be vertical, just as a simple example. And so having those parameters in place, I think gave Alex a clear understanding of what it was that she needed to create. It really allowed me then to think about kind of puzzle pieces of where I could bring my hand into play, but also make sure I stood back far enough that the portraits could really be the showpiece and the strong piece. And then one of my favorite parts of our collaboration on this was being able to show our samples of ideas to Kelly and Susie and Dominic, and really have some conversations that were, there was some discomfort at times with some of the approaches, like, wow, these are really roughed up, these are the portraits have been deconstructed. There are some textural elements here that are not maybe traditionally what we had expected to see as downtown artwork. But through that process, again, there was some trust of like, you know what? Okay, guys, you take it to where you think it needs to go. We believe that that's the right way. And that was so reaffirming to me. I was completely willing to say, all right, we got to dial it back. Let's dial it back. But earlier conversations really laid out the idea that, there's a difference between public art and public visuals, okay? And if we just want public visuals, we can keep this really safe. But if we want public art and we want Main Street to feel like a gallery space that these things are displayed within, then we're gonna have to take some chances. And it might mean that some people are like, what is this? And other people are really excited by it. And that's okay. Conversation is sometimes any conversation about the art on display is good, even if it's based in dissatisfaction or confusion. That's okay. It means people are looking and they're considering it. So that moment, which was probably February or March of 2020, allowed me to really settle into the project and be like, okay, this is real. This is an art project, not kind of just moving things around on a screen so that it can be printed and hung, and I really didn't ever think of it that way, but I had concerns that it might go that way. So major kudos to Kelly and Susie, Dom, and the DAP crew for allowing us to push those boundaries. And I mean, I go down Main Street every day on my way home from work, and I just can't get enough of seeing those colors and those spaces. And it's almost like a stop motion. It's its own animation as you're going through Main Street to see those things happening one after another. And I can tell you, as an artist, that's a test. If you aren't scared to see your work on display, like if you don't take an alternate route home because you're like, oh God, I can't look at that anymore, that's a pretty good sign that it worked. So yeah, I think the collaboration smoothness had a lot to do with trust, parameters being drawn up very early, and then letting us kind of just go wild within those boundaries.
I mean, from ArtsNow's perspective, Kelly and DAP just do an incredible job of setting the tone for these things. And the right people fall into place as a result of that foundation that they're building with how they go about, requesting proposals, interacting with artists. And there's just a tremendous amount of value to how they handle it. And then the people as a result, like Micah and Alexandria, that they bring in. And Bill, sorry, Bill, you're part of this too.
It couldn't have happened without these guys. So I was the nerd in the corner, just like coding, building stuff. So I'm good. I'm just excited to work on whatever the next project is with everybody. I feel like, I mean, my big question is like, Micah or Alexandria, like, if we could just blow something out, like what would be like a dream project? I don't know if we have time. We might be coming up at our time, but I would just love to know, just based on your experience with AR, like, what is that like? How far would you want to push something? Would you bring in sound effects? Like what would you do?
I've got answers for this one.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this earlier. And this is, well, just bear with me really quickly here. I think it's kind of cool, the idea that we're coming into an age of technology that we kind of like laughed and said, oh, haha, what if? You watch a movie and you have like super spy glasses. And now apparently they've been, released just an hour ago and they're a real thing. I think the potential for public art to be interactive in that way is actually really appealing to me. When I took some travels abroad a couple years ago, in France, you have all of these little, why am I forgetting the video game name? The video game pieces that it's a really old digital shooting game, Space Invaders. You go around Paris and you find Space Invaders, and this is a big thing, you know, trying to see where all of these little Space Invaders are throughout town. I think it would be really cool to just have all these little nooks and crannies of public art that are then interactive when you just look at them. Sound effects and everything. I think that's something that would be really cool. And that's something that I was like, oh, you know, that could never happen. But Bill's telling me it can happen. And so I've got really high hopes for the way that public art and AR and all these types of softwares can interact. I don't know what part I'll be taking in all that, but I'll just be really happy to kind of see it come to life in that way. Everybody already loves engaging with public art in general. To see something kind of move, even the project that we've worked on here, to see that, like, I honestly can't wait to show my parents. They're gonna think I'm cool, and it's really all Bill. But seeing things come to life in that way, that's just literally anything. That would be my dream sort of project. Space Invaders video game as I walk down the street. Someone provide Bill the funding to make this happen.
Man, we are not far
Oh,
from that.
we do have our vice president of our the new Akron Arts Commission on the call. So Larissa might want to weigh in on whether or not we can get Space Invaders in downtown. Sorry, Larissa.
Oh, jeez.
You know, what I would love to see too is, you know, the towpath cuts right through, right where the artwork is, right through Lock 3 and Lock 4. Something AR related that could help people see alternate routes or possibilities as they're approaching towns, riding or running on the towpath. So you could split off the towpath here and go into Akron and check out these breweries or restaurants or other bike paths. If that can layer right on top of the towpath while you're riding, if you have the right eyewear or phone, would be really incredible. And also the history of the towpath. You know, I think that Akron's foundation is really built on that. So being able to learn those things as you're zipping along, you know, that 110-mile route down to New Philly could be really incredible.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all four of you, Kelli, Micah, Alexandria, and Bill. This has been such a fun conversation and positive and just everything you want to come out of these things. And I'm really excited to see what Micah and Alex, what you create into the future as you kind of start to maybe potentially experiment with different things. And as always, yes, what DAP has planned for downtown. There's always something new to explore. And so, yes, with that, I really would like to thank our co-hosts on this, Downtown Akron Partnership and S3 Technologies. We're lucky to have such great partners here in Akron to make these things come to life. So with that, I encourage everyone, included in the chat, but also coming in an email will be a link to a survey. I encourage you all to fill it out, let us know what you thought. And yeah, just really enjoy the rest of this warm but beautiful sunny day. And thanks all so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.